The Cornish mystery. Mrs. Pengelley, the landlady announced, before quietly withdrawing. While Poirot's advice was sought by many unpleasant characters, the woman now hovering nervously in the doorway, fingering a cheap marabou boa, struck me as singularly unattractive. She was remarkably nondescript. A thin, faded woman of about 50, dressed in a knitted cardigan and skirt. A gold locket dangled from her neck, and her graying hair was crowned by a hat that did her no favors whatsoever. In any provincial town, you would pass 100 such Mrs. Pengelleys every day. Poirot greeted his visitor politely, though she was clearly overcome with embarrassment. "Madam, please, I pray you take a seat. My colleague, Captain Hastings." The lady sat down, murmuring uncertainly, "You are Monsieur Poirot?" The detective. "At your service, madam." The visitor, however, seemed unable to begin. She sighed, twisted her fingers, and her cheeks grew increasingly flushed. "Is there something I can do for you, madam?" "Well, I thought that is... You see?" "Go on, madam. I beg of you, proceed." Under Poirot's encouragement, Mrs. Pengelley finally found her voice. "You see, Monsieur Poirot, I don't want to go to the police. No, never to the police. But something is troubling me deeply. Even so, I don't know if I should..." She stopped abruptly. "I have no connection with the police," Poirot assured her. "My investigations are conducted strictly in private." "Private. That is exactly what I need. I want no gossip or scandals in the newspapers. They write such things, and with such malice, that one's relatives can never look people in the eye again. Of course, I am not certain. It is just a terrible thought that haunts me when I cannot escape." She paused to catch her breath. "Perhaps I am wronging Edward. It is a dreadful thing for a wife to suspect her husband, but such things they do happen. Forgive me, but are you speaking of your husband?" "Yes." "And you suspect him of what exactly?" "It is unbearable for me to say it, Monsieur Poirot, but one hears of such things happening, while the poor wives suspect nothing until it is too late." I was beginning to despair of the lady ever coming to the point, but Poirot possessed extraordinary patience. "Do not be distressed, madam. Speak freely. Imagine what a joy it will be if we can prove your suspicions are without foundation. That is true. Anything is better than this awful uncertainty. Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I am terribly afraid that I am being poisoned." "What leads you to think so?" Mrs. Pengelley, her reserve finally breaking, launched into a detailed confession more suited for the ears of her family doctor. "Pain and sickness after food?" Poirot said thoughtfully. "And what does your doctor say, madam?" "Acute gastritis, Monsieur Poirot. But I can see that he is puzzled and anxious. He is constantly changing my medicine, yet nothing helps." "Have you spoken to him of your suspicions?" "No, Monsieur Poirot. I daren't have talk going around the town. What if it really is just gastritis? And yet, it is strange. Whenever Edward goes away for the weekend, I am quite all right. Even Frida noticed it. My niece. And then there is that bottle of weedkiller. The gardener says he has never used it, yet it is half empty." The woman looked at Poirot pleadingly. He gave her an encouraging smile and reached for a pencil and notebook. "Now to business, madam. Where is it that you live?" "In Polgarwith. It is a small market town in Cornwall." "How long have you lived there?" 14 years. "And your household consists of yourself and your husband? No children?" "No children. But you mentioned a niece, I believe?" "Yes. Frida Stanton, the daughter of my husband's only sister. She has lived with us for the last 8 years. That is, until a week ago." "And what happened a week ago?" "Things went wrong suddenly. I don't know what got into her. She became rude, defiant, and terribly irritable. Finally, she flew into a temper and left the house. Took rooms for herself in town. I haven't seen her since. I think it's best to leave her be until she comes to her senses. That's what Mr. Radnor says, too." "And who is this Mr. Radnor?" Mrs. Pengelley became slightly embarrassed again. "Oh, well, he is just a friend. A very pleasant young man. Is there anything between him and your niece?" "Absolutely nothing," Mrs. Pengelley said with emphasis. Poirot changed the subject. "Are you and your husband people of means?" "Yes, we are quite well-to-do." "And the money Does it belong to you or your husband? Oh, Edward owns everything. I have nothing of my own. You see, madam, to proceed with this case, we must settle a few delicate matters. We must look for a motive. Your husband would not attempt your life poor Passerl attempts. Have you any idea why he might wish to be rid of you? That bold, flaxen-haired hussy who works for him. Mrs. Pengelley replied, her face flushing with anger. My husband is a dentist, Monsieur Poirot, and he insists he must have a pretty blonde with a bob and a white apron to make appointments and mix fillings. And that bottle of weedkiller, where did it come from? My husband ordered it about a year ago. And your niece, has she money of her own? About £50 a year. She would be glad enough to come back and manage Edward's house if I were gone. So, you are thinking of leaving him? I have no intention of giving in to his whims. Women are no longer the meek slaves they used to be, monsieur. I admire your spirit, madam. You are a woman of independent character. But to the matter at hand. Do you return to Polgarwith today? Yes, I came by the morning train, and I go back at 5 this evening. Bien, I have no urgent affairs at the moment, so I can devote myself to yours. Tomorrow, I shall be in Polgarwith. Can we pass Hastings here? Poirot nodded toward me. As a distant relative, the son of a second cousin, perhaps, and I shall be his eccentric foreign friend. Until then, madam, eat only what you prepare with your own hands, or what is prepared in your presence. Do you have a servant you can trust? Jessie is a very good girl. I am sure of her. Then until tomorrow, madam, and keep up your courage. With a bow, Poirot saw the lady out and returned to his chair with a thoughtful air. His preoccupation was not so great, however, that he failed to notice 2 tiny tufts of down that the visitor's nervous fingers had plucked from her boa. He carefully picked them up and dropped them into the wastepaper basket. What do you make of it, Hastings? A nasty business, I should say. Yes, if the lady's suspicions are well-founded. But are they? Woe to the husband who decides to buy a bottle of weed-killer if his wife suffers from gastritis and has a tendency toward hysterics. You think that's all it is? That I do not know, Hastings. But the case interests me. It interests me very much. For you see, there's absolutely nothing new in it. There are many hysterical women. Indeed, if I am not mistaken, we are watching a human drama as old as the world itself. Tell me, Hastings, what feelings do you think Mrs. Pengelley has for her husband? Devotion struggling with fear? I suggested. Yes, as a rule, in their misfortunes, women are inclined to blame anyone but their husband. It never even occurs to them to doubt him. But here there is the other woman. True, under the influence of jealousy, love can turn to hate. But hate would have driven her to the police, not to me. That is how she would have sought to satisfy her righteous anger. No, let us set our gray cells to work. Why did she come to me? To dissipate her suspicions or confirm them. Yes, we have here something I have not often encountered before. Can she be an consummate actress, our respectable Mrs. Pengelley? No, I do not believe she was acting. I could swear she was quite sincere. No, I am decidedly intrigued. Inquire about the trains for Polgarwith. Hastings, I beg of you. The most convenient train left Paddington at 3:50 p.m. and arrived at Polgarwith a little after 7. The journey was uneventful, and, waking from a pleasant doze, we got out at the small, depressing station. After leaving our bags at the inn, we decided to pay an immediate after-dinner visit to my second cousin. The Pengelley's house stood a little back from the road. There was a small garden in front. The evening breeze brought the sweet scent of stocks and mignonette. It was impossible to believe that in this charming nook of old England, crime could have been committed. Poirot rang, then knocked. As no one answered, he rang again. After a small pause, the door was opened by a disheveled servant girl. Her eyes were red, and she sniffed violently. We wish to see Mrs. Pengelley, Poirot explained. May we enter? You've not heard, then? She's gone. Dead. A half hour ago. Dumbfounded, we stared at her in silence. What did she die of? I asked at last. You must ask someone else. She looked quickly back over her shoulder. If there had been a soul to stop in the ooze with the missus, I'd have packed and been off. But one can't leave the deity alone. It's not my place to speak, nor am I going to say anything, but everyone knows. The town's talking of nothing else. And if Mr. Radnor doesn't write to the Home Office, someone else will. The doctor may say what he likes. Did I not see the master take the bottle of weedkiller off the shelf myself tonight? And didn't he jump when he saw me looking? And the missis's gruel was on the table to be carried up. No, not a crust of bread will I touch in this house again. I'll starve first. Where does the doctor live who attended your mistress? Dr. Adams? Round the corner in High Street. The second ooze. Poirot turned sharply away. He was very pale. For a person who didn't mean to speak. She said a good deal. I observed Drilly. Poirot struck his hand against his thigh. Fool! A fool! Nay, a criminal! That is what I am, Hastings. Boasting of my grey cells, and allowing a murder to happen. The murder of a person who looked to me for protection. I did not dream that the danger was so immediate and so imminent. If I am to tell the truth, may the good God forgive me. I never dreamt that anything would happen, but set it down as the fancies of a hysterical woman. Well, we have arrived. Let us hear what the doctor says. Dr. Adams was a typical country practitioner, hearty, red-faced, just such a one as the book's picture. He was quite friendly, but when we spoke of what had brought us to him, his face grew a yet deeper shade of purple. Nonsense. Nonsense. Every word of it. As though I should know. Gastritis. A pure case of gastritis. The place is a perfect nest of gossip. The old women are simply not happy without a scandal. Get together, gabble, read all the scurrilous newspapers that print lies, and imagine every husband is a poisoner. If they see a bottle of weed killer on a shelf, someone must be being put away with it. I've known Edward Pengelley all my life, would not hurt a fly. To think of him as a poisoner, and why should he wish to poison his wife? I'd like to know. There is one circumstance, Monsieur le Docteur, of which you probably do not know. And Poirot gave him a very brief outline of Mrs. Pengelley's visit to us. The doctor was dumbfounded. His eyes seemed fairly to bulge out of his head. Lord forgive my soul, he ejaculated. The poor woman must have been mad. Why did she not talk to me? You would have laughed at her fears. Not at all. I hope I am not so hidebound that I am not open to suggestion from my patients. Poirot smiled slightly. The medical man was clearly more upset than he wished to show. When we were outside, Poirot said, obstinate as a pig. He has said it is gastritis, and he will stick to it, but his heart misgives him. What is the next step? To return to the inn, where we have a terrible night before us. Mon ami, for there is nothing worse than the iron bedstead, such as you find in the English provincial inn. And tomorrow? Rain off fair. We shall go back to London and wait for developments. Unsatisfactory, I commented with a sigh. Suppose nothing develops? They will. That I promise you. The old doctor may give as many certificates as he likes, but he cannot stop several hundred tongues from wagging, and wag they will. The London train left at 11 o'clock. Before going to the station, Poirot expressed a desire to see Miss Frida Stanton, the niece. We had no difficulty in finding the house where she had taken rooms. In the parlor we also found a tall, dark-haired young man, whom she presented with some slight embarrassment as Mr. Jacob Radnor. Miss Frida Stanton was a remarkably beautiful girl. Hers was a distinctively Cornish type of beauty, with dark eyes and hair and a lovely, delicate color. And in those dark eyes there was a hint of a character that was not to be trifled with. Poor aunt, she said, when Poirot had introduced himself and explained the business that had brought him. It is terrible. I have a bad conscience. I should have been kinder to her, more patient. But you had a lot to put up with from her yourself, Frida. Radnor interjected. Yes, Jacob, but I have a quick temper, and that was part of it. After all, I shouldn't have taken all that nonsense to heart. I should have just laughed and kept quiet. Of course, all those fears about poisoning, pure rubbish. She felt ill after any meal Uncle prepared, but I'm certain it was only her imagination. She worked herself into such a state believing he was poisoning her that she simply died of it. What was the primary cause of your disagreements, mademoiselle? Miss Stanton did not answer, looking instead at Radnor. The young man quickly took the hint. I must be off, Frida, until this evening. Goodbye, gentlemen. If I understand correctly, you are heading to the station? Poirot confirmed that they were, and Radnor departed. You are engaged, are you not? Poirot asked with a sly smile. Frida Stanton, flushing, murmured yes. And that was the root of all the quarrels with your aunt, she added. Mrs. Pengelley did not approve of your choice. Oh, it wasn't just that. You see, she... The girl fell silent. She what? Poirot prompted gently. It feels dreadful to say such a thing now that she's gone. But if I don't tell you, you won't understand. My aunt was head over heels in love with Jacob. You don't say. Yes. Ridiculous, isn't it? She was over 50, and he isn't even 30. But there it is. She behaved so foolishly toward him that I had confessed that he was courting me. But she wouldn't believe a word of it, and she insulted me so terribly that I finally lost my temper. Jacob and I talked it over and decided it was best if I left the house for a while, to let her calm down. Poor aunt. She really was quite strange. I expect so. Thank you, mademoiselle, for explaining everything to me. Radnor, to my surprise, was waiting for us outside. I can guess what Frida told you, he remarked. What a stroke of ill luck. Can you imagine the awkward position I'm in? It goes without saying that I had nothing to do with it. At first, I thought the old lady was showing me favor just to help me win Frida. But it turned into a complete farce. I'm terribly embarrassed. When do you and Miss Stanton intend to marry? Soon, I hope. I want to be frank with you, Monsieur Poirot. I know a bit more than Frida does. She believes her uncle is innocent. I am not so sure. I'll tell you one thing. I shall keep quiet about what I actually know. Let sleeping dogs lie. I don't want my wife's uncle convicted of murder. Why are you telling me this? Because I've heard of you, and I know you can unravel this business. But what's the use? It won't help the poor woman now. And she, of all people, dreaded a scandal more than anything. Why? She'd turn her grave at the very thought of it. You are likely right there. So, you wish me to hush the matter up? Exactly. I'll be honest. My request is driven by self-interest, too. I'm trying to make my way in the world. I want to open my own shop. I'm a tailor and stylist, you see. We are all a little selfish, Mr. Radnor, but not everyone is willing to admit it. Of course, I can choose to do nothing, but I tell you frankly, you are unlikely to succeed in hushing this story up. And why is that? Poirot raised his hand toward the market square we were passing, where the hum of the crowd could be heard. Do you hear the voice of the people, Mr. Radnor? Now, we must hurry or we shall miss our train. A most curious case, Hastings. Poirot said once the train had pulled away. My friend produced a small comb and a tiny mirror from his pocket and began meticulously adjusting the tips of his mustache, which had lost their symmetry in our rush to the station. Is it? I asked, astonished. To me, it all seems very distressing and commonplace. There is practically no mystery to it. I agree with you, there is no mystery. I suppose we can take the niece's revelations about her aunt's strange passion at face value. That is the only fact that struck me as suspicious. Mrs. Pengelley was such a fastidious and respectable lady. That means nothing, I assure you. If you read the newspapers carefully, you will find that fastidious, respectable ladies frequently leave husbands they have lived with for 20 years, and sometimes children, for the sake of some youth. You admire les femmes, Hastings, especially those ready to bestow a charming smile upon you, but the female soul is a closed book to you. In the twilight of her life, a woman inevitably passes through a phase of madness, where she hungers for some extraordinary romantic adventure before it is too late. This madness did not pass by the wife of a provincial dentist, and you think that a clever man might take advantage of it. I wouldn't say Pengelley is very clever, otherwise he would have acted more carefully, I remarked after a moment's thought. On the other hand, perhaps you're right. Those who actually know something, Radnor and the niece, both want to bury the matter. Even the doctor is on his side. It's a pity we never got a look at Pengelley himself. Well, that is easily remedied. Go back on the next train and pretend you have a toothache. I looked at him searchingly. I should like to know what it is that has interested you in this case. Me? Well, remember your own remark, Hastings, after our talk with the servant. You noted that for a person who didn't want to say anything, she said a great deal. Oh, I said doubtfully, and immediately followed up. In that case, why didn't you try to see Pengelley? Mon ami, I shall wait 3 months, and then I shall see my fill of him when he is sitting in the prisoner's dock. I believe that this time Poirot's predictions would prove wrong. Time passed, but the Cornish case seemed to go nowhere. We were occupied with other matters, and I had almost forgotten the tragedy of the Pengelley family until I stumbled upon a short notice in the newspaper. It stated that an order had been received from the Home Office for the exhumation of the body of Mrs. Pengelley. A few days later, the Cornish mystery was in all the newspapers. It appeared that the local gossip had never truly subsided, and when the widower's engagement to Miss Marks, his secretary, was announced, tongues wagged more furiously than ever. Finally, a petition was sent to Home Office. The body was exhumed, and a large quantity of arsenic was found in the tissues. Mr. Pengelley was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. Poirot and I attended the preliminary hearing. As expected, the evidence was plentiful. Dr. Adams admitted that the symptoms of arsenic poisoning could easily be mistaken for gastritis. An expert from the Home Office gave evidence. The maid, Jessie, unleashed a torrent of information, much of which was refuted, yet it nonetheless heavily bolstered the case against the accused. Frida Stanton testified that her aunt grew worse every time she ate food prepared by her husband. Jacob Radnor reported that he had dropped by the house unexpectedly on the day of Mrs. Pengelley's death and saw Mr. Pengelley putting a bottle of weedkiller back on the pantry shelf, while Mrs. Pengelley's gruel stood nearby. Finally, Miss Marks, the blonde secretary, was called. She became hysterical but admitted that her employer had promised to marry her should anything happen to his wife. Pengelley reserved his defense and was committed for trial. Jacob Radnor walked with us back to our hotel. You see, Monsieur Radnor, said Poirot, I was right. It was impossible to hush this matter up. The voice of the people, as they say, would not allow it. Yes, you were quite right. Radnor sighed. Does the poor fellow have any chance of getting off? Since he has reserved his defense, he likely has, as you English say, something up his sleeve. Perhaps you will join us for a moment. Radnor accepted the invitation. I ordered 2 whiskeys and sodas and a cup of chocolate. The latter clearly caused some bewilderment, and I doubted the order would be filled correctly. Naturally, Poirot continued, I have much experience in cases of this kind, and I see only one loophole for your future uncle-in-law. And what is that? Sign this paper. Suddenly, like a magician, Poirot produced a sheet of paper covered in writing. What is this? Your confession to the murder of Mrs. Pengelley. There was a moment of absolute silence. Then Radnor burst into laughter. You must be mad. No, my friend, I am not mad. Now, I shall tell you how it actually happened. You came here, started your business, but you were desperately short of money. Mr. Pengelley was a man of considerable means. You met his niece and liked her, but the small sum Pengelley would have given her as a wedding present did not satisfy you. You decided to secure all their money. For the inheritance to come to the niece, the only blood relative, both the uncle and the aunt had to be removed. How cleverly you managed it. You started a romance with that simple-minded older woman and sowed seeds of doubt in her soul regarding her own husband. First, you opened her eyes to his affair with the secretary, then led her to the thought of poisoning. You were a regular guest in the house. It cost you nothing to seize a moment and add arsenic to her food. But as a cautious man, you never did so in the husband's absence. A woman, by nature, cannot keep her troubles secret. She told her niece. She discussed it with her acquaintances. For you, the only difficulty was convincingly playing the lover to both ladies at once. But that proved not so hard. You explained to the aunt that you must pretend to court the niece to allay the husband's suspicions. And the young lady required little convincing. She would never have taken such a rival seriously. But then Mrs. Pengelley decided, without a word to you, to consult me. If I had confirmed in my investigation that her husband was indeed trying to poison her, she would have had every reason to leave him for you, which in her mind was your fervent dream. I was ready to begin my inquiry, but then a perfect opportunity arose. Before your very eyes, Mr. Pengelley prepared gruel for his wife. It was simple for you to slip in a fatal dose. The rest was easier still. Under the guise of wanting to hush the matter up, you constantly fanned the flames with hints and remarks. Even to me, Hercule Poirot, you attempted to explain who had truly poisoned Mrs. Pengelley, but you treated me as a mere mortal, my ingenious young friend. Radnor was deathly pale, yet he gave a careless wave of his hand, attempting an air of indifference. A most interesting narrative, but why tell this to me? Because, monsieur, I represent not the law, but Mrs. Pengelley. For her sake, I give you the chance to fly. Sign this paper, and you shall have a 24-hour start before I place it in the hands of police. Radnor hesitated. You can prove nothing. What is it you say? I, Hercule Poirot? Look out the window, monsieur. There stand two men who have been ordered not to let you out of their sight. Radnor went to window, pulled back the curtain, and recoiled. You see, monsieur? Sign. Do not throw away your only chance. And what guarantees do I have? That I will keep my word? The word of Hercule Poirot. Sign. Good. Hastings, be so kind as to raise the curtain. That is the signal that Mr. Radnor is to be allowed to pass. Turning even paler and muttering under his breath, Radnor rushed headlong from the room. Poirot nodded as he watched him go. Coward, I knew it. I think you become far too sentimental. I cried angrily. You, who are always so against sentiment, suddenly allow a dangerous criminal to escape. It is not sentiment, nor is it suddenly, Poirot countered. Do you not see, mon ami, that we had no proof of his guilt? Imagine, I stand up and tell 12 phlegmatic Cornish men that I, Hercule Poirot, know this and that. They would laugh me to scorn. The only thing I could do was to frighten him into a confession. Those two idlers I noticed in the street came in quite usefully. Lower the curtain. Hastings. There was no need to raise it. It was merely a piece of stage management. Well, then, we must keep our word. I said 24 hours, and that means poor Mr. Pengelley will spend one extra day in prison, a fate he richly deserves, for, as you recall, he was deceiving his wife, and I am a zealous defender of the sanctity of the home. 24 hours, and then... I have great faith in Scotland Yard. They will catch him, mon ami. They will catch him without fail.